G'day, boys. Simon here, Simon Cigar and Spirits, coming to you from my little cigar lounge here in Sydney. And I've got a very good friend of mine from all the way up in Brisbane, beautiful Brisbane. Manu, how are you today?
Excellent, man. Actually, quite happy you're doing this.
Oh, really?
It's really nice. I mean, well, I don't know if I'm sure a lot of people realize how much of a encyclopedia you are in cigar knowledge, but
I think that's
I
very...
don't think a lot of people realize how much of life you've been through.
Oh, man. That's... And that's why I enjoy the company of others and enjoying experiencing like beautiful whiskeys and beautiful cigars and just learning about other people too. And that's been the fundamental basis of this whole channel, you know, to learn about people, to learn about what everyone's up to and where they've been and where they're heading to. So,
There's a lot to learn from others, isn't it? It's often very nice to just be a sponge.
Absolutely.
There's merits to being a wall at times, but a sponge is a much nicer place to be.
Absolutely. Hey, Manu, I sent you some cigars or a couple of cigars, but the one we're going to be sampling tonight is the H.upmann by AJ Fernandez. I'm just going to read a little description on this cigar and we can have a bit of a smell. So this is H.upmann by AJ Fernandez. They're handcrafted in Esteli, Nicaragua. So it's a Nicaraguan cigar. They're absolutely gorgeous. I've had these before, as we were just saying earlier. They're one of the top AJ Fernandez become one of the top Nicaraguan cigar makers in more recent time. This particular cigar is it's from Ecuador with Sumatra rubber leaf and a hardy interior of premium Dominican and Nicaraguan long-filled tobaccos. The result is a medium to full-bodied profiled cedar nuts, medium to full-bodied cigar. Profile we're going to get out of this. We can expect cedar, nuts, coffee bean, a bit of oak with hints of pepper. And also to note, guys, this cigar is being rated 92 by Cigar Aficionado. So this is a highly rated cigar. I'm always super keen to tuck into this. They're always really tasty.
Wine nose and whiskey nose is getting, before I lit it, is getting a lot of, interestingly, fruit.
Yep.
Like it's, I'm surprised they didn't actually mention that because it's quite dominant. Is maybe not so much in the initial inhalation, but in just the smell of the cigar, there's sort of citrusy fruit and
A
little bit of
very cool.
very natural herbaceous sort of floral notes, and it actually makes it very approachable. It's not a intense cigar, if you may.
Absolutely. It's very approachable.
Very elegant.
No,
Very
it's
approachable.
not very approachable. Very approachable. There's a beautiful light aroma. I'm getting a very light aroma of fruit and just very natural sweetness on the tobacco. If this was a cologne, I could wear every day.
Yes. It's, because obviously, I mean, the devil's advocate in me would say that spice, pepper, cedar, oak, all of those notes are very generic for a good cigar anyway, for a top-notch cigar. Whereas the nuance...
You always get it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say that spice will always come if you retrohale. So if you blow some smoke out of your nose, you'll get a real big tingling in your sinuses and it might make you sneeze the cough. So just be cautious when you do it.
By nature, heat in spice. So say Schofield scale hotness is actually not a taste sensation, it's a pain sensation. So it actually stimulates the pain receptors. So it is actually not at all a taste sensation. The heat in spice, as in when you blow out a cigar through your nose and what you feel in tingliness, not what you sense in taste or smell. The heat you feel is actually pain. So when you swallow literally a Trinidadian scorpion chili, yeah, that's just all pain. It's, chili lovers are secretly masochists. No, I'm kidding. But nonetheless, yeah, so it's weird. But in reality, the nuances, of you particularly are critical to my cigar knowledge and tastes, because you've sent me so many incredible things over the time we've known each other. And it's I think the interesting thing for me, as a guy who's written about wine for over 15 years and whiskey for a long time now, is how similar the absolute technicality of taste notes are. The taste profile, say nose, palate, finish, taste profile of a cigar, and the fact that I'm not a smoker. I mean, here I am holding a cigar saying I'm not a smoker, but I'm not a cigarette smoker. I've never been.
Not at all.
I am a doctor. So, and the fact that I can enjoy this without actually having to inhale much, lovely.
And it's also not you don't crave the nicotine either. Like, you're not craving to run outside and smoke a cigar because you're yearning for that nicotine hit. It's more along the lines of you're yearning that camaraderie or that relaxation. Like, a cigarette is just a very fast and sort of straight to the point hit of nicotine, and then move on to whatever other stresses I have for the day. Well, with a cigar, obviously, and much like with whiskeys and so on and so forth, where and I always say this, people who watch me will always hear me saying that time stands still when you're smoking a cigar. You make the most to literally just slow down and just relax and contemplate and just really hang out. Hey Manu, I've got a couple of questions here I want to ask you, and then Luke can sort of carry on. I've got just a few. There's probably about 10, but it's a bit of some of them are tongue in cheek, some of them are a bit serious. But if you were to be stranded on a deserted island and could only have one bottle of whiskey and a box of cigars, which one of those would it be? Sorry, which brand? Which brand would it be?
You know what? I'll show you which one. It's actually one that you sent me. So I was in Penang, in rural Penang, in the village. It was nearly 50 degrees and humidity was 98%. So it was the apocalypse. When you called me and told me about a few boxes that were about to go on auction and all that sort of stuff, and these highly regarded collectors sent, and it's the one with the bull, the toro.
Oh, yeah, I saw it's the bull. Oh man.
So I thought eventually when something really nice happened to me, I would smoke one and try one. So when I got a negative scan after my last cancer treatment, I thought, yeah, and that's the box. That it. Forget the cigar. The box itself, it's extraordinary. Like, I do want to send you one back as a actually have one with you, promise, as a celebration. But that's the cigar. And here's why. There was 4 or 5 main things. Number one, you don't actually have to light it up to get a huge flavor profile. You just open it, and it is a wafting breeze of flavor bouquet. There was fruit, there was herbs, there was oak, there was a almost smack you in the face, you and me outside now brawl kind of intensity to the spice. It wasn't subtle by any means. It was the name suits because it was a bull that was charging in it.
They are literally some of the rarest cigars to get your hands on, and I think worldwide, worldwide when they've manufactured those, I think there's only, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I would say anywhere between 150 boxes to 250 boxes a year for worldwide. So you can understand very. So they're extremely rare. So, but, I mean, and another for the Fuente family using some of the most incredible tobaccos, the Rig.
The only downside is with Fuente is, and I found this recently, is because they've gotten that fame, just the humble. What's the one that they are most famous for? It's that Fuente is famous for.
858, Don Carlos.
The Don Carlos. The Don Carlos, like you can barely get him, or if you have to pay God's money now to get him off someone else who's bought him. And they used to be a very approachable, not cheap, but cheapish, affordable cigar for just everyday man, middle class, or
It's
just a
an-
normal man.
But it's like they've got a cult following. They've got an absolute cult following nowadays. People are collecting, anything and everything they can get. And it just always, like you would understand, it just becomes supply and demand. Like we talked about Pappies or H.upmann or any of those sort of super premium bourbon, even like, whiskeys in that matter. But, when it becomes a supply and demand thing,
Exactly. It becomes a supply demand thing, yeah.
And it's unfortunately speaking of Pappy, with Pappy, the reality is like Pappy. So Pappy Van Winkle used to be a salesman who worked for the guy who was a businessman who bought Buffalo Trace and set up Buffalo Trace as it is now. He was his main salesman. So he was a door-to-door salesman. And he was then given a role in Buffalo Trace to set up some bourbon stuff and look after a few things. And he set up the Pappy. Pappy means, like, he was a grandfather, obviously. So his nickname was Pappy. And reality was the whole range was designed in his taste profile and what he found his customers liked a lot. But over the years, it's become this legacy. It's become this sort of unicorn, like as if he was the Messiah's son. And suddenly, Pappy, which actually, ironically, now that the market's equalizing a little, we came back from Alberta with the entire range of Pappy, 15, 12, 20, 23, and the special reserve for less than $1,500. And that is the actual retail of Pappy. That's the real price of Pappy. Now, Pappy 23 alone is worth twice that.
yeah,
You go, but this is what supply demand does. But
absolutely.
speaking of which, that Desert Island whiskey you were saying, I'm a Macallan nut man. Like so for me, one of the nicest whiskeys in the world, and you can actually still buy it at what it's supposed to be, which is just under $500. It sounds a lot, but it is worth what it is a Macallan 18 sherry cask. By rule from the distillery for quite a number of years now, Macallan 18 sherry can't be sold to the public. It's only for bars. So the way you get it is obviously through some contacts or through someone who owns a few bars, which is $400 something. And it is, unfortunately, it gets charged, I don't know, you can find Macallan 18 sherry anywhere from $50 a nip to obscene amounts of money, like $200 something a nip. But it should be about $20 a nip is what it should be. But hopefully some people still charge that. But it is from three master distillers of Macallan, Nick Savage, Bob Delgado, and his predecessor, their favorite whiskey. It's just old-fashioned 100-year-old bodega in Spain, in Jerez, spelt Jerez, which you'll see on some of the bottles. Aged sherry casks, not seasoned casks, aged sherry casks, still maintained the same casks, and they age Macallan spirit for 18 years minimum, up to 24, 25 years. And they bottle this whiskey, and it's sold only to bars, and it is still one of the nicest whiskeys, and all of them say it's their favorite whiskey. And it's a benchmark. It's like, the haters will hate, but when supercar companies make a supercar, they benchmark it at the 911 Porsche. And that is it. They just do things right year after year after year. It's the same thing. You just benchmark, and that's a Macallan 18 sherry. So there you go.
There you go. So
I've rambled on
you
a bit, but that's the answer.
Taurus the bull and a bottle of 18. So I hope I get stranded on that island with you. If they're the two, I don't know, but I'm hoping I get.
Absolutely.
You sort of elaborated now a little bit. So I was going to ask you, what are your top 5 whiskeys, bourbons? Like, what would be your top 5?
So I wrote an article for Rob Report about this ages ago. What is your top 10 whiskeys, they asked me. But I said, look, I actually have 2 lists. I'm a realist. And right now, the world is in peril in a lot of ways. Middle class, lower middle class, and the lower socioeconomic classes are struggling. So we've seen this in Australia, where the whiskey market is going through a big correction. People are not paying the crazy prices for whiskey like they used to. So I have 2 lists: money no object and value for money. My favorite list is the value for money.
Fuck.
Bang for buck. Value for money, top 5, and that's the list I'm most proud of. Well, actually it's a top 10, but I'll tell you the top 5. It's hard. It'll be randomly chosen from the top 10.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be any particular order.
Absolutely. So in no particular order, taste profile. So I'll group them in taste profiles. And the key notes about all of these whiskeys is they are core releases, which means they're not special releases. Anyone can buy them, and they are affordable, meaning less than $100 to just over $100 with correction. Buy them on sale, buy them online, steal them off whoever, but they are worth every cent. So sweetness. There's a guy called David Stewart who's worked for 50-something years for the family that's still largely owns William Grant's or Glenfiddich. From the beginning, they've never gone bankrupt. There's only 2 real distilleries in the whole of Scotland, and they've never really had a break in sales. They've done their business well. They've been robust since get-go, and it's Macallan and Glenfiddich, the William Grants. And he's worked for William Grants. He started as an apprentice. He then was put in charge of Balvenie, which is just around the corner. So if anyone visits Scotland, they want to organize not Glenfiddich tour, but Balvenie tour, where you can go from start to finish. And David Stewart's been there for 52 years. Imagine working for one company for 52 years and your legacy. Sure, he's handed over the reins to his prodigy, but he's still there. So a Balvenie 12 or 14 Caribbean cask, he pioneered one thing a lot of people don't. Oh yeah. A lot of people don't realize where the term double cask or triple cask comes from. It means double maturation, where you take primary maturation is in one cask and then you finish it in another cask. That wasn't invented by David, but he perfected it. Modern day double casking is David Stewart's principle, and everybody copies it. Everyone, including Macallan, everyone copies it. So a Balvenie 12 or 14 Caribbean or rum cask, as they call it, Caribbean rum, is
It's a perfect pairing for a cigar too.
oof. It is just the best bang for buck, sweetness oriented whiskey. If you want to bring someone who doesn't like whiskey into whiskey, there's a whiskey to bring him in. And another one is the humble Macallan 12 sherry, or Macallan Classic Cut, which is Macallan 12 sherry cask strength. So again, $100 ish, maybe escalated up to 200 even, depending on retailer. But that's about what it's worth, and it's a perfect example of what a sherry cask whiskey should be, meaning spice, pepperiness, a little bit of sweetness, citrus dominance on the nose. So that's the second one. Third one is from a peat point of view. So peat is, I just noticed something. As the night's gone dark, I basically look like a head with teeth. But then I'm old enough, you and I are old enough to know back in the day where DCDs used to be sold pirated. And I remember where someone walks into a cinema with a camera camcorder, records the movie and sells it pirated. Quality so bad. Like I watched Rush Hour and it was so dark. It was literally Jackie Chan and teeth. And that was all you saw of Chris Tucker. It's just like, anyway, I'm veering. Peat is basically when you and I, dogs, cats, plants, and dog shit dies and goes into the ground and becomes biomatter. In a million years, that'll be crude oil that we make petrol from. But in about a few hundred years, that's basically a sort of, I guess you can call it a brownish, blackish biomatter that's under sort of earthy soil, which Scots used to, Scots were poor, so they used to dig up peat to cook with, heat with, because it's combustible. And they grew up with this smell, this smoky smell. So when whiskey became popular, they wanted to incorporate that smell in whiskey. So they cook the malted barley, which is basically germinating barley. They cook the peat underneath, and germinating barley is like a child, like any baby. It's a sponge. It'll soak anything you teach it or give to it. And so like a child, it'll soak up that smoke. And then they have to predict how much smoke is at the end, meaning distillation, then maturation, then finishing and bottling, what smoke is left and what's the flavor. There's one whiskey which year after year after year is just peated perfection. And that is Lagavulin 16. So
I was expecting that.
Yeah, every whiskey aficionado will tell you, like, it's just the perfect example of peated whiskey. And what do you call it? Nick Offerman or Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation is the ambassador. So what's not to love? So yeah, Lagavulin 16, definitely. So we've got Balvenie 12 or 14. We've got Macallan 12 or Classic Cut. We've got Lagavulin 16. Then it becomes a bit difficult because after that there's a few. So again, from a value for money point of view, there has to be a blended whiskey. The grand champion of whiskey in the world is not single malt. After all the fame single malt has gotten, 92% of the whiskey market is still blended whiskey.
That's incredible.
So you have to have a blended whiskey in there. And a lot of, again, whiskey aficionados' favorite is, wait for it and don't judge me, Johnny Walker. Yes, I said the word, green. Yeah. So Johnny Walker Green is actually a bloody amazing whiskey. People don't give it credit. And again, whiskey ambassadors will tell you this. People who work for Diageo, the best blenders in the world work for Diageo. And the master blenders will tell you, again, yes, even Johnny Blue that people pay crazy money for with God knows whatever bollocks design they have every year, is still the same production line as Johnny Red, which has 29 different whiskeys in it. Johnny Green has its own production line. It's brilliant whiskey with an intense flavor profile. And again, it's that sort of $100 whatever bucks in and around price point. And it's a sensational whiskey. And if you find it at duty free, it's a liter bottle for like just over $100. Just get it. Just buy it.
And it's slightly faded too. I believe
it is slightly faded too.
It's a very good entry point for people who are looking to get into trying peated whiskeys. That's also a very good entry point.
too right. We're paying $2,000-3,000 for a Grange Penfolds wine, which is a blended wine. You know, but the great thing about blending is you can get whatever flavor profile you want. You blend it to the profile. So blended whiskey is what it is. You blend it through the profile. And so, yeah, there has to be a blended whiskey, and it is Johnny Green. And then last one, of course, you have to add the biggest outside blended whiskey market in the world, which is bourbon. So you have to have a bourbon. Ironically, my favorite bourbon is from all my visits to North America, which is the largest used bourbon in. So if you order an old fashioned, traditionally in North America, they will always use Buffalo Trace bourbon or any local bourbon. And if you order a premium old fashioned, they will always use their nicer bourbons, which is either Woodford Reserve Double Oak or this one, which is Bullet 6-year-old. Sorry, my mistake. Bib and Tucker 6-year-old. So Bib and Tucker, it's a blackish bottle. It's less than $100. It's 6 years old for a bourbon, which is quite aged, and it's a really, really good bourbon. Bib and Tucker 6. That's it. Nothing wrong with a Woodford Reserve Double Oak, but again, that's getting up there in price. But Bib and Tucker 6-year-old bourbon.
I'll have that one up myself. I haven't tried that one.
Easily available and sort of hidden gem, if you may. They know it very well in North America, but here, hidden gem. Everyone lusts after the named whiskeys. Now we're getting Eagle Rare 10-year-old at $100, which is an incredible bourbon. So that should be in most people's list anyway. So Eagle Rare 10 is sensational. On sale is often less than $100. So there you go. There's the 5, man.
And just before we carry on, what do you think of this cigar?
You know what? You were right when you taught me about cigars and how it matures as the cigar burns and changes based on how they wrap it tighter and tighter as they go. It's mellowing, and I like it.
It's not going to compete with your whiskey. So whatever you're drinking, what are you drinking actually? What have you poured?
So again, speaking of hidden secrets, a lot of people pay good money for Bruichladdich, or Bruichladdich as they're called. And the Bruichladdich release every year a single cask range of whiskies, either their own or somebody else's cask, which is released under Bruichladdich name, called Micro Providence. So this is Changi Airport's single cask. It's a wine cask, and it's bloody amazing. $110.
There you go.
Probably the nicest thing I found in Changi Airport, and there's a lot in Changi Airport. So it's got those, as they call it. The best way to describe this whiskey is it's very winey. It's like drinking a nice tannin.
I usually say that about my wife.
Hang on, I'm being cheap, and she's always listening. Let me just make sure. Yes, yeah, same here.
No, it got the tannin, it got the fruit, the berries. It's brilliant. So
Yeah, lovely.
and I'm a sucker for stemmed glass. So cheers, man.
It's
Sláinte.
beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, there's the 5 whiskeys, man.
Beautiful. Mate, I'm going to ask, what's one of your fondest memories of smoking a cigar or having a whiskey?
Oh, That's a tough one. Because there's a few. One of the nicest memories of having a cigar and a whiskey together was me with 4 other people. We were sitting here at night. I had, it was only maybe 2-3 years ago. I spent a lot of time chasing the FOMO, sort of doing things because I thought that was what needed to be done, or that was what would get me acceptance. And eventually, you sort of reach a correction in your life when, thankfully, I reached it a bit earlier in my life, when you realize what's most important. And I had de-asseted a lot and sort of put my efforts into what was most important in life, but at the same time had lots of fun until that point. And we'd all realized we were doing the same thing. And yeah, we'd literally all realized we're all at that same point where we're all doing the exact same thing, is correcting our life. And that's not to say, like, I have a different take on all the luxuries and that sort of stuff. Like I said, if you like nice things, you get nice things, but you get it because it's for you, not because you think other people need. You enjoy it. Rolex Kona, and you want to lust after it, that's fine. If you want, a Lamborghini Aventador SV, and you want to go through the motions of being qualifying to buy one, and you buy one, or you want to reach the stage where Ferrari invite you to buy a Daytona or an SP3, and then, or you get a plane, it's because you want that for you. You need that, or you want, not because someone else thinks you should do it. Exactly, social acceptance. Same thing with whiskey. Like if you had to buy this, the crazy, Macallan La Ligue or something like that, and but you do it because you're setting up a premium bar and you wanted a hero dram, or you like it, you want to enjoy it with your friends. Bless you if you've got that sort of money, and but not because you want to post about it and boast. So that's my take. And yeah, that was that moment. And guess what cigar we were smoking? It was one that you sent. Of course it was one that you sent. It was the one, the XX, the cognac barrel one.
I gotta try and remember.
I forgot
now.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Bloody.
I was laughing about it because the boys saw my overflow eskies. They've got like big eskies there, I think 60 or 70 litre eskies, and that's all my overflow cigars because I can't fit no more in my fridges. And the boys were laughing about it the other day. I'm like, oh, what about that cigar? And I'm like, honestly, don't even ask me because I can't remember half the shit that I've got anymore. It ends up getting that way. Manu, I want to ask you a couple more questions, then we'll just sort of roll into it. We'll keep going and just without me asking.
Go for gold, man.
Let me. So okay, so say for we've spoken about this before. You've been one of those people who love to sort of educate others and sharing the experience of whiskeys and doing tutorials and stuff like that. What are some good fundamentals for people who are looking to get into whiskey and really want to try and get the most out of whatever they're drinking? So what's the best way that they can really experience the profiles, the nuances, and really start to try and better develop their palate?
Yes. No, excellent question. That's actually more my... So, okay. Fundamentals. Fairly straightforward. And my first advice is keep it simple. My second advice is don't follow taste notes. And it's the same principles for wine and whiskey and cognac and cigars. Touché. So don't follow taste notes. Keep it simple. Keep it affordable. And keep it approachable. But the most important thing is memory. You have to remember. If you don't, if you go and try 10 epic whiskeys, but you get so schnockered that you don't remember anything, well, that's pointless. You might as well have done that with Fireball. So the reality is you want to remember. So here's the thing. First, there's 3 principles to whiskey tasting. Nose, palate, finish. There's 3 parts, rather. First things first. Put a gentle sniff. Don't dilute the whiskey. You will dilute it later. There's always, everyone will tell you, drink the whiskey the way you want to drink it. But if you truly want to taste the whiskey, here's how. Number 1, take a gentle nose from a distance. Don't dip your nose in, and you don't need to swirl with whiskey. It's got more than enough alcohol in it for you not to swirl. So take a gentle sniff. Now remember the 1, maybe 2 things. Just stick to 1 if you can. Note that comes. Keep it, whether it's basic like sweet, sour, spicy, strong, oaky, woody, anything. Remember it. Now, we're all culturally different. There's Middle Eastern, there's subcontinental or Indian or Sri Lankan, there's Chinese, there's Southeast Asian, there's North American. So we all have different taste profiles for the similar tastes. There are different names for that. When I had to learn what butterscotch was, I thought it was a lob of butter with Johnny Red on it. So I didn't know what exactly. When someone told me what licorice was, and I thought, but whatever it is, remember it. Now go back in, smell it again, find that same taste note again. And if it wasn't there or isn't there, rename it. If it is there, remember it. Now taste it. Try a tiny bit. Find that same taste note that you smelt. Find it again. Aha! There it is, the honey. Or if you're Asian, the sort of sweet pork, the char siu pao, or if you're Indian, like the gulab jamun, kind of real sweet, or if you're like that baklava, kind of real honey-like sweet taste note that you've smelled. Aha, there it is again. Now you remember it. Okay, good. Oh, wait, I've swallowed my whiskey. What am I still tasting? Am I finding it still? That's called the finish. Finish doesn't mean what's coming back up. It's actually what's left in your notes, in your palate, in the back of your throat, in your nose. It's everything. So what's that finish? Oh, there it is again. Now you remember the whiskey. So that taste note is what you remember the whiskey by. Now in the palate, when you taste it, you might add an extra taste note. So add an extra one. And then in the finish, you might say, oh, something else is coming. Like most often in most whiskeys that have a sweet taste note, you'll get a spice at the end because of the sherry. So you get, that little bit of cinnamon or the bit of spice, or whatever else you want, a pepperiness. That's it. Three taste notes. Finished. Add anything you want to it, but that 3 fundamental taste notes is what you remember the whiskey by. How do you know you remember it? Because when you've done 5 of them, I will blindfold you and get you to find those 5. And 9 out of 10 people who are novices will find them. Because they've kept it simple. And that's it. That's whiskey in a nutshell. Adding water. So there's a whole thing of adding water or ice. Now, if you're going to add ice, my advice is always add 1 tiny ice cube or a big fat ice cube in a large glass. And there's a logic to it. The tiny ice cube will add just enough water to not dilute all taste profiles of the whiskey, And the giant ice cube, because of the surface area, will only dilute a little bit at a time over half an hour and an hour, so as to not dilute the whiskey completely. Why do you need to? Oh, but a lot of people say, but no, I can take this. No, this is not that strong for me. I can take this without diluting. Well, we're all humans. So the oils and the intensity of the whiskey will hide the secondary tastes that are in the whiskey. When you add a little bit of water, it disperses the oils, and water disperses oil. That's just physics. And the secondary taste profiles, because the intense taste profiles have been diluted a little with the water, the secondary profiles will shine. The floral, flowery notes, the subtle perfumed notes, all the little spices, they'll shine through. And no matter who you are, you'll find them. So that's why you dilute whiskey. What is the law of drops of water? Well, in Scotland, they say, when you go to a hospital and you're in pain, they'll say, rate your pain out of 10. 10 is when you want to die, and 1 is when you're fine. Rate the intensity of a whiskey out of 10, and that's how many drops you add. Add a bit of ice, add a bit of water, and try the secondary notes. So that's the second. So the first principle is keep it simple and approachable. The second principle is the taste notes, the nose, palate, finish, and how you find them. The third one is don't be afraid to dilute. And the last one is you want to be able to replicate this. It's an experience. So teach others, do it with others, and replicate it. You don't need to try expensive unicorn whiskeys. Try something you're going to buy again and again and again. There's whiskey.
Is there a specific? So I know when we've spoken previously, and I've spoken to other guys in the whiskey and also cigar industry. A better time to really decipher and sort of break down those whiskeys, having a clean palate. You're not wanting to do it after you've had like a big meal. You've been on the barbecue all day cooking and you're sweating and you've had these big meat sweats and your palate's completely tainted by all these different profiles.
You're right. You're right. So again, we are humans. 70% of taste is smell, so your nose. And the vast majority of your nose is innervated by one nerve called the vagus nerve. And it's a nerve that actually is involved in you fainting. So that nerve is activated when you need to faint, when the body needs to shut down everything. So that nerve slows down everything. So it gets very fatigued. It'll slow everything down the more you've stimulated it. And so the reality is, if you fatigued your senses, that's not the time to taste a whiskey. That's the time to enjoy a whiskey, but not the time to taste a whiskey and find nuances in it. Not unless you're one hell of... So, yeah, you're right. And a clean palate, yeah. You do want to have a clean-ish mouth.
And then is there any... Could you recommend a way, eating green apples? Like I've heard people say green apples, or having, a coffee, or how can you essentially... What are some tricks that you could possibly do to reset your palate? And I know it's not going to be a true and try, it's not going to be 100% certain, but,
So, the myth behind coffee, the whole coffee thing came from the perfume industry. And unfortunately, coffee is an intense smell on its own. So it actually does fatigue the palate, and it clouds the palate as well. It clouds the nose, rather. The best way is actually yourself. So you'll find distillers doing this a lot. Smell your own skin. You know your smell. That's the way you neutralize your nose. Smell yourself.
I've never heard that one before.
If you smell like rotten potatoes, fine. You know your smell. If you've got body odor like a wet dog, sure. No problems. You know your smell. So neutralize your nose on yourself. It sounds weird, but hey, everybody in the industry does it. And
Huh?
if you want to neutralize your palate, honestly, I don't know, man. Like, drink water. It's,
Yeah.
it's
I think
It's-
I drink like bubbly water, like sparkling water. Depends on the kind of I drink bubbly.
yeah.
It sort of gets rid of any sort of any taintness or any kind of, I just find that it really cleans my palate. And then if I want to start trying to taste and profile things, I pick up a lot more after I've had, and not a flavored sparkling water, just straight sparkling water. Mate, I'm going to ask a few more questions. So we spoke about the top 5. Tell us, Manu, a little bit more about yourself. About what does Manu do on a day-to-day basis? What does Manu do for fun? What do you drive? I know a lot of people like to know what you drive.
So Manu is a country GP. I spent a lot of years sort of out bush, doing head-to-toe medicine, do a lot of community work, especially out country where there's not many services, mainly in mental health and child and youth health and old people, especially geriatric. Like, the sad reality is a lot of our old remain alone, so a lot of services to give them penny and take them places. So that's for me, my bread and butter is rural medicine. What do I do on a day-to-day basis? Other than that, I do teach. So I've got a university sort of position where I lecture and I teach critical care to doctors, but I also do some university lectures for med students. And I do whiskey education now and then. Otherwise, sports is important. Like, my missus is fit, and a lot of our adopted kids have grown up. But they're all a lot of them are into sports, and they, I like boxing as well. So I run with the local police sergeant for many years. We run the boxing club, and we love our boxing. I've followed boxers since the 80s. Nazim Ahmed, Mike Tyson, and a lot of the greats. Yeah, so and these days Vasyl Lomachenko and Usyk, who trains with Vasyl Lomachenko's father, and a few others. Yeah, I love boxing. I've always been a petrol head, so I am blessed that I can finally live my dream racing car. So I race in GT for Ferrari, and I have driven quite a number of cars over the years, from a Mitsubishi Colt manual secondhand all the way to a 1976 Golf GTI. And I'm a big Golf GTI fan. I've collected Golf GTIs, and I've driven a Model T Ford, which is quite an experience, from 1892. So it's quite an experience. The brake pedal and the accelerator pedal are not for the brake and the acceleration. One, you got 2 pedals. They control revs and they control gearing. And then you got 4 stalks, which control power, indication, gearing, braking, throttle. And then you got the steering. And yeah, how you can concentrate, I have no idea. Then I've driven a Pagani Zonda with
$8 scary as hell, but it was loud.
What was that like to drive?
It's one of the greatest sounding cars of all time. It was a pig to drive, but it sounded like God.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's a race car. So at the end of the day, there's no creature comforts and
It's a type of car. I don't think it's a race car. Like, they have a race car version, the Zonda R and Huayra R, but they are hypercars. Like, Horacio Pagani was a designer. He worked for Lamborghini. He actually worked for Ferruccio Lamborghini, and he went and did his own thing. And he he proved that you can make a boutique hypercar company, and when the product's good, and even the threading of the carbon fiber on the bolt that bolts down the panel matches with the threading of the panel, which matches with the threading of the next panel. It's just meticulous. So it's a work of art, and it sounds amazing because the attention details amazing. So sure, but one of my favorite cars ever is the GR Yaris. So it's a lovely car. It's a rally car for the road, and between that and race cars, I've driven a lot, but I do like
Scotty here the other night from the Whisky Connoisseurs Club, and I believe Scotty's actually got one. I think Scotty said that he's got one of those kinds of Yaris.
I mean, I've just upgraded to a Corolla, the GR Corolla, and it is a monster. They're just great cars. Like, I love our Tesla. I actually love our electric Model S that we've had for nearly 7 years now. It was one of the first in the country, and we just love that thing. It's but at the same time, there's a time and place for everything. Like, I mean, there's a problem now with everyone chasing electric cars, but the world has realized this whole electrification is not what it's supposed to be, and probably the future is in cleaner burning fuels like biofuels and hydrogen, liquid, fuel cell is an amazing tech if they can figure out how to transport liquid hydrogen more efficiently. But
they're fan of electric cars, personally, only because of that could be
Something else.
well, I have a Ram. Eight.
exactly. If you can.
When I bought it in Canada, they said, "Oh, you got 5 options you have to pick. What's option number 1? A gun rack." I went, I'm sure. I went, "Oh, you don't use gun racks?" I went, "No." What do you use for protection? "Oh, usually I just cry and piss myself and then call the police."
I'm an 800 horsepower car. I just drive off. Try and catch me.
Yeah. They had an attachment on. Sorry, you would think?
No, I was going to say, you said that you drive for Ferrari, or you drive a GT. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So after many years of racing in cars and a Ferrari, eventually Ferrari Australasia said, "Oh, why don't you drive for us?" And so I race in GT as a Ferrari sponsored driver. So unfortunately, my last race didn't go so well, where I ended up on multiple TV channels crashing on the top of Mount Panorama, and I was more famous than the guy who won the race. Actually, one of the nicest things that happened was, guess who came to check if I'm okay? Who was actually racing in the Bathurst 12-hour? Valentino Rossi.
Really?
Yeah.
What a legend.
He was racing in BMW, and they won their class. And he came up and he said, "Oh, that was spectacular." Jeez,
Not the best way I was hoping to meet you, but
Can you sign my shirt while you're here?
oh gosh, I got him to do more than that. I got him to sign the radiator they pulled out of the car because it was battered up.
is now mounted on the wall.
What's one of the best tracks that you've been to?
Oh, by a long shot, the Bend in Adelaide.
Yeah.
When money is no object, a billionaire family just picked the greatest corners in the world and stitched it up into a $700 million track that they built as their plaything. And it is one of the nicest things in the world. Like, I've driven around the world. Yeah, this thing is... Everyone talks about Bathurst and Mount Panorama. I mean, Bathurst is amazing, but, tracks in Europe like Spa and Ascari, which is another billionaire's track. But are amazing, but and iconic, and his history, and the Nürburgring, of course. But the Nürburgring, it's a road. It's a perilous road which everyone crashes in, and you spend most of your time clenching your anal sphincter going around it. But it's just there just so you can tick a bucket list. But otherwise, yeah, the Bend in Adelaide. If you ever get a chance, even if you have to drive a Hyundai, but whatever, just do it. Rent a car and go. I shouldn't say that, but yeah, rent a car and just do it.
I've got my toy car, which is, I'm super patriotic. I bought one of the last made Australian Commodores. It's called an Sport edition. So there's only I think 1,000 of them in Australia, and that was based on the supercars. So I'd love to take that, but I mean, I'd probably get myself in a lot of shit if I get in there and just start tearing around the track.
Okay, no, not really, because the great thing about the Bend is because they built it as a ground-up racetrack. So they bought the old Mitsubishi Proving Grounds where the Mitsubishi factory was before it got shut down. So they bought the whole thing, and they built this track. So as you do, tobacco family, and they own 80 something all the petrol stations in South Australia. So, yeah, Iranian family, but nonetheless, the runoffs on all the corners is so big that it's hard to get yourself into grief at the Bend. So it's very safe track, very safe. Yeah. So yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone. So
yeah, definitely, man. I'll definitely have to answer that. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions before we start to move on. Can I ask you a bit more about your whiskey collection?
Oh gosh, that's just 20-something years worth of tragic. Really, one thing about my whiskey collection, not many things are unopened. Almost everything is opened. Not many people that, and I do appreciate not many people are in that position to have nearly 15,000 bottles.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a long time. 20 years is a long time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's one of your prized possessions? What's one of your prized possessions in your collection? And I'm not saying like value, not value for money or whatever is one of your prized possessions.
That's actually an easy answer. So, Macallan there's a lot of hype, obviously. They become a marketing Goliath and everything's marketing. But the history of Macallan is incredible. They started and they never stopped. They are one of the most established distilleries globally, even bourbon-wise. When the Nazis were invading the whole of Europe, and they wanted to bomb globally, even human-wise, being part of it. When they picked Nazis targets, which were critical of Euro targets, and they wanted to, in Scotland, there were only that many targets that they actually bombed purposefully. And one of the critical targets, critical to Scotland, that was chosen to be bombed was Macallan.
Oh, wow.
History-wise. And so this warehouse was destroyed, and a very few barrels survived. And I have whiskey from that barrel. Almost empty, but it's a 60-year-old Macallan that's from the bombing. And obviously, like most things old Macallan, it's not owned by Macallan. So Gordon MacPhail they are the biggest independent bottlers in the world, and they're third generation, and now in the fourth generation, and they've got over $1 billion more than that, worth of whiskey. And most distilleries are buying old barrels back from Gordon MacPhail because they've got older barrels than the distillery. So Gordon MacPhail bottled this thing, and
that's crazy.
Wonderful. I mean, it's surprising how little money I paid for this, because this is before the whole whiskey hype and all that. So I can't afford it now.
And it was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you think, I know with cigars, I can answer on cigar perspective, and I'm pretty sure I know about whiskey, but I'll ask you, are they a good investment?
They are. But you got to be careful these days. Everyone is promoting whiskey investments in barrels. And barrels used to be a great investment at one point. Every barrel used to be a great investment at one point. But now the barrels are so overpriced. If you buy a barrel from an established distillery, they have a barrel program, you're paying such a hype, such an escalated price for the barrel. You're not going to get your money back. You have to buy, like if you pay $20,000 for a barrel, that's 200 something liters, or $15,000. You have to bottle the whiskey at thousands of dollars to get your money back. So
Yeah.
it's not worth it. And of course, barrels that go into auction are just silly money, like an Ardbeg 80-liter, a barrel that had 80 liters in it, sold for millions of pounds. It's just silly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Chinese lady that bought it is going to get money back from it because she's going to gift it as the barrel whiskey and get favors from it, or gifts to powerful people. But not many people have the money. So my advice is, as an investment, buy the next big thing. Use your whiskey knowledge to predict what is the next good thing, and buy that. Or if you get your hands on something, a collection or some bottles that are going on special or real crisis sale or good prices in auction. In auction, go for the lesser known ones, like the independent bottled special whiskies. Like there was a point in time, no one looked at Springbank. They release a bunch of bottles with the Ukraine flag on it once Russia invades Ukraine. And suddenly everybody's after Springbank because there was fights at the distillery to buy the Ukraine bottles. And then next thing you know, the Springbank 10, which we were buying for $60, is now like $300. And you go, whoa, what happened there? So, or $200. So, I mean, you still get it for $60 in North America. But yeah, that's a big thing. And with barrels, get quality barrels. If you want to invest in a barrel, quality distiller, quality barrel. Buy that. You know, that's it. Or if you get a nice bottle at a crazy price.
And have you ever tried, I want to ask one more question before we start to close this down. Have you ever had the luxury of ever trying a whiskey from a distillery that's now no longer existent?
Yeah, a few. But the most standalone one is Karuizawa in Japan. So Karuizawa was set up. It's a beautiful distillery, beautiful location. They were set up with money, no object. They bought the best sherry barrels they could get their hands on, made the best spirit, and went for aged whiskey. And then, of course, realized if you pump all your money into it, you're going to go bankrupt because whiskey hadn't taken off as crazy as it did at that point. So they went bankrupt. So I had the privilege of tasting Karuizawa before it went bankrupt. And it's still one of the greatest whiskeys in the world, but it's just silly money now.
So they're still around, so you can still get bottles, but obviously the distillery is no longer. But I guess that's what we talk about investing too. Like if you were to invest in a bottle of that prior, had you known, and then obviously they go bankrupt or close down.
Sold, a very rare thing for me to do is to sell a bottle. And I sold a bottle. I didn't go to sell it. A Chinese billionaire who owns a mine came up to me to get a bottle of Karuizawa Geisha series, 35-year-old, and he paid 42 grand for it. And the whole money went to the rural mental health program that I was struggling to keep alive. And just injected huge amounts of funds. He liked the story as well, so he just gave me a blank check. But it was I think I posted about that, and it's a good story. But again, I bought that bottle for just over $1,000, and you think, people are not going to get that bottle for that sort of money now. It's just not possible. So it's, who knows what the future will be, but yeah, we're seeing a correction now. So now is a good time actually to look into these sort of things.
And Manu, one more question before we wrap it up. You've mentioned, and in our own personal conversations that we've had, and I'm not sure if you want to talk about this or not, but you guys do a bit of, I'm not going to say charity work because I don't like the word charity work, but you do work in communities that are less advantaged here in Australia and overseas. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? And is there a way that people, if they want to donate or if they want to assist, is there a way that they can reach out to you to be able to help
Yeah.
in any way?
So absolutely, sir. No, thank you for bringing that up. Like we lost, our boy a long time ago, and a long time ago, like I'm Sri Lankan, so I came from war, and I've been in war, and in more ways than one. And my father used to rebuild this temple, and he's an expert designer, and we kept noticing in this temple brought people together. That was what it was. It wasn't to be religious, but it was more the festivals gave people a reprieve from the war. We found these kids were staying there and they never left. And then eventually I realized these kids had nowhere to go. So they stayed in the temple. The priests couldn't look after them. So these kids had parents. Their family died through landmines, mostly landmines. Like landmines took a lot of people, and they around the world. Because when war finishes, no one's clearing the landmines, or during war even. And so we built an orphanage. I didn't have the money, and I borrowed and remortgaged and all that. And eventually, all those kids grew up, and the orphanage just became bigger and bigger and bigger. There were hundreds of kids, and they all grew up. So eventually, I realized when my lifespan was going to be numbered and my father's lifespan is going to be numbered, we realized we needed to find a continuation. So there was this dying hospital we always were passionate about resuscitating, and I integrated the orphanage into this hospital in Jaffna in North Sri Lanka called Mulai Hospital. And we did a few things like IVF services to bring money in, and of course it spends a lot of money as well. So somehow my father managed to make friends with the Japanese embassy, and the Japanese have been amazing to us. They've donated so many things to us. It was weird bringing everything they donated into the country because the previous regime was so corrupt. We had to bribe people to actually bring things in for services. Everyone wanted a cut. It's just blows your mind. But anyway, so that's amen. So that's the main thing is the hospital. That's most of what I do now. And in Australia, it's rural health. The two main things are child and youth mental health in central Queensland, especially disturbed children. And I do it with the police because they find ways for the kids who get into trouble to do other things and rehabilitate. Not just boxing. Boxing's been great. The boxing academy teaches. I mean, the biggest thing about boxing is discipline, training, mind work.
Community.
Exactly, like drills and working with others. And it's not just about punching things. So that was great. And the geriatric thing, the old people services, because, nothing worse than being lonely, incapacitated, debilitated out bush. There's limited services and you can't travel places. So those are the two things I do. So, welcome to reach out.
If people want to support, can you let us know what's the best way for them? Have you got like your Instagram, or is there an email, or is there a way that we can sort of help push that? I'm a massive fan of doing community work and doing work for people.
Share my email and whatever. There is a charity fund, but right now I haven't opened anything up yet, but I have a thought about it. It's something I'm doing right now, but my email's manu@nbgp.com.au. Welcome to reach out anytime, and I'll make sure. Like I said, I'm not a business in terms of philanthropy, but we do it because we want to, and this is what I get out of it. Well, closure, legacy, and just a warm place in the heart. I wouldn't say I'm a saint by any means, but this is sort of what I do to sort of feed my heart in things I've lost. And if anything happened to me tomorrow, at least we'll all be remembered, and something will continue. What you do for yourself dies with what you do for others lives forever.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm a massive fan of. We've spoken previously about my daughter and the fundraising efforts that we do here in Sydney with the hospital network and stuff like that. I've also done some work. That's when he said about the landmines. I did some work in Myanmar and Cambodia, and the tragedy of landmines over there is so bad. So bad. Lamborghini,
Team. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
just so sad what they've done to the community. And wherever we can help, we help. And whatever we can do, you know, that we don't have to do big things. You could do something small, and, you know, well, to the community, it always makes that heavy lifting no lot.
Is to contribute towards the groups that coordinate the engineers from around the world, mainly Western countries, who go to these countries to take out and dig out landmines.
Man, it's just crazy. It's honestly
Not-
crazy.
Animals, like endangered animals, die from these landmines, and you think, oh, I mean, how many tigers have died? You know, tigers are an endangered species themselves, and you think, contribute to that. And, you know, just in Australia,
So I was just going to say, it's a surreal feeling when you go into those sort of areas in remote parts of those countries, and you see signs where they say, do not enter, you know, mine zone, or there's, you know, a minefield, and you're like, what the hell? Because coming from a country like Australia where it's so developed, to have an area isolated to say, well, there could be mines there, man, you'd never see that here in a million years. I mean,
for surgery to remove some shrapnel, which I've carried my whole life from a landmine because I couldn't get MRIs. And I was like, oh okay, that's interesting. I had someone cutting open my rear end to remove a few shrapnel. I never thought of that for 20 years, or 30 years. Okay.
But yeah, no, that in a privilege, man.
mate, thank you so much. Honestly, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I honestly am humbled to have you on my merely humble show. And
With what you've done, thank you.
mate, I'm absolutely honored to have you on. And if anyone wants to reach out to Manu, I'll put his email in the description. Manu, do you mind if I put your Instagram?
Sure. Go for gold.
If they want to reach out. And yeah, mate, again, thank you so much for joining me and for giving me your time. I didn't mean to take you away from your family, but good conversations flow, as they say.
Always. And thank you much for this.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoy the rest of it and enjoy your jam.
Man. You're an inspiration, man. I hope to share one with you face to face very soon.
I'd love to have you here at my my little lounge that I've built. So when you're in Sydney next racing, please, mate, please make some time to come and see me.
Very soon. Thank you.
All right, mate. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate your time. Take care, mate. Take care, guys. I'm Simon Cigar and Spirits. I'm going to tune out here. Hope you enjoyed this recording with my good friend Manu up in Brisbane. And guys, if you can, please like, subscribe, and share. If there's anything you want to know about what we've spoken about tonight, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. As I always say, I'm super active on Instagram. I'll put Manu's details on there as well if you want to contribute any way, shape or form into what he's doing, the fantastic work he's doing. And guys, hope you all stay well, stay safe, and hope to see you on the next episode, which will be next week with another gentleman from Queensland, and that one's going to be a pretty cool story as well. So guys, take care. That's me, Simon Cigar and Spirits. I'm tuning out.